A question for the ages is, how does our personal view and worldview shape our identity? In this presentation, Chloe and I will be taking evidence from Fahrenheit 451, Harrison Bergeron, The Tipping Point, A Long Way Gone, and Game of Thrones to show you how we think your personal view and your worldview shape your identity. Another novel that can show how your identity can be dictated by your worldview and your personal view is Fahrenheit 451 by Ray Bradbury. In Fahrenheit 451, the main character, Guy Montag, is a firefighter who has known nothing but burning books his entire life. After he meets the new neighbor, Clarice McCullen, Guy Montag starts to realize that books may not be as bad as they seem. He starts to dwell into the world of critical thought and making decisions for himself instead of going along with what his society had deemed appropriate for decision-making. Montag begins to fall into a state of insanity as he begins to think freely for himself instead of what the society wants him to think. His identity had been solely created by what he had been seeing on the media from the society's entire life. Along with Montag's identity, his wife Mildred Montag had also been dictated by what she had been seeing in the media. Instead of becoming a family with her husband, she decided to solely be a part of the Parlor families, in which she created a separate family and a separate life apart from her husband. Mildred's separation and Guy's drifting towards the truth both show how their identities were defined by their personal and world views. In Harrison Bergeron by Kurt Vonnegut, Harrison is locked up in prison for being stronger, smarter, and faster than everyone else. His worldview was defined by the fact that society would not let him truly become what he was and who he was actually supposed to be. Harrison's actions had been dictated by his thirst for vengeance against the society that had locked him up for years. Evidence to Harrison's handicaps can be found in this quote by Kurt Vonnegut. A police photograph of Harrison Bergeron was flashed on the screen upside down, then sideways, upside down again, then right side up. The picture showed the full length of Harrison against a background calibrated in feet and inches. He was exactly 7 feet tall. The rest of Harrison's appearance was Halloween and hardware. Nobody had ever borne heavier handicaps. He had outgrown hindrances faster than H.G. men could think them up. Instead of a little ear radio for a mental handicap, he wore a tremendous pair of earphones and spectacles with thick, wavy lenses. The spectacles were intended to make him not only half blind, but to give him winging headaches besides. Scrap metal was hung all over him. Ordinarily, there was a certain symmetry, a military neatness to the handicaps issued to strong people, but Harrison looked like a walking junkyard. In the race of life, Harrison carried 300 pounds. And to offset his good looks, the H.G. men required that he wear at all times a red rubber ball for a nose, keep his eyebrows shaved off, and cover his even white teeth with black caps at snaggletooth random.
One other example is how Ishmael's life changed tremendously based off of how he lived his life. In A Long Way Gone, Ishmael Bea was a normal kid living his life as like a 10-year-old kid. And then all of a sudden this huge war breaks out and he has to join the war as a child soldier. And that affected his life tremendously because he had to live his life as a soldier and learn how to properly shoot a gun and kill others and take drugs. And that majorly impacted his life. This connects to our thesis because if Ishmael didn't go into the war and do all the things that he do in the war, his life would be so far different. Another example that explains how society changes a person is the broken windows theory that Malcolm Gladwell discusses in The Tipping Point. Gladwell explains that the more broken windows in an area, the more vandalism and the more run down an area is, the more crime is likely to occur there. This connects to our thesis because it shows that when an area is in poor shape, people are more likely to become like vandals and whatnot over nicer areas.
The theme of personal views and worldviews defining your identity is not only seen in novels, but is also seen in the show Game of Thrones. A character that perfectly displays this theme is Sansa Stark. Towards the beginning of the show, Sansa was seen as immature and naive. But as she continues to grow and sees how her world is changing, she becomes dark and closed off. By watching the horrors of her family's death, her worldview dictated her identity and her personality.
In conclusion, society has a definite impact on the lives of people today. If the events that go on in our lives change even slightly, our lives would be so wildly different than they are right now.